We're going live on YouTube. Started. Okay, now we're live on the YouTube. Okay. Great, now we'll go. Hello, welcome to our virtual opening for the MG&E show at the Rhode Island Watercolor Society. We're just gonna take a minute to let people get settled and get started in the room. People are just starting to come into the room. So we'll just wait a minute or so for the webinar for everybody to kind of get in, settled in, and then we'll start our program for this evening. While we're waiting, we do have live transcripts available for closed captioning. So if you'd like to turn on the closed captioning, there should be a button at the bottom of the screen that has a CC on it. You click on that button, you should be able to turn on your closed captioning so that you can have that available. It is done artificially, it's AI, so it's not 100% accurate, but hopefully it'll help a little bit if you need it. Great. Okay, I'm gonna get started. So welcome. My name is Rebecca Leopoldina Torres, and I'm currently serving as the president of the Monotype Guild of New England. And I'll also be serving as the moderator for our Q&A later on. On behalf of the Guild, I wanna thank you all for joining us tonight for our virtual opening of the Juror exhibition titled ImPRESSive at the Rhode Island Watercolor Society, which is on view through November 5th. Before we begin tonight's program, I'd like to begin by respectfully acknowledging the indigenous cultures of New England. As the Monotype Guild is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, we join you from the traditional and ancestral territory of the Massachusetts people and the Wampanoag tribe. I would like to recognize them as the past, present, and future caretakers of this land. This land is a place that has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among nations. So in that tradition, we look forward to our meeting and exchange tonight. Whether you're joining us tonight from our webinar format via our live stream on YouTube or watching the recording at a later date, we're so grateful for you and happy that you're able to join us. If you haven't done so already, please feel free to drop a note in the Q&A or in the comments section below to let us know where you're joining from. We're always interested to hear who is participating in our events. For those of you not familiar with the Monotype Guild of New England, we are a volunteer-run nonprofit printmaking organization that's consisting of over 300 contemporary artists creating unique impressions by working the mediums of monotypes and monoprints. As we are a volunteer-run artist organization, MG&E is currently funded primarily by our membership dues and donations. So I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank all of our members and volunteers who are helping to keep this organization not only running, but growing and thriving. Just a few points of logistics. We are in the webinar format in Zoom, which at this point, most of you are probably familiar with. We invite you to submit brief questions via the Q&A box below. You probably should see a button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentation, but we will hold them until the very end. And like I mentioned earlier, live captioning is available in the Zoom webinar format, so please feel free to click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Okay. With all that housekeeping out of the way, let's get on with the program. So we are excited to relaunch our in-person exhibitions this fall with our second exhibition of the fall titled ImPRESSive, partnering with the Rhode Island Watercolor Society. This was a juried exhibition that was open to members of both the Monotype Guilds as well as members of the Rhode Island Watercolor Society. So for tonight's program, we're going to show you a short video of the exhibition featuring the 75 works on view. And then following the video, Mary Wojciechowski will be joining us to talk a little bit about the Watercolor Society. She's both a member of MG&E and the Rhode Island Watercolor Society, so we get the privilege to hear her talk about the beautiful location of this exhibit. After that, our juror, Adrian Tió, will speak, followed by the 3 award winners, Adele Donahue, Margot Rockland, and Paula DeSimone. So without further ado, let me start the video. Just give me a moment to share it. Great. So I like to introduce Mary Wojciechowski, who's going to be talking a little bit about the Rhode Island Watercolor Society and about the beautiful location that we're able to exhibit for this show. So I'll hand it over to you, Mary. Mary, you have to unmute.
Okay, I'm in. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to thank Becca and Carol for inviting someone to represent the Watercolor Society for this open virtual opening. I am now, I do have, as Becca said, I do hold memberships in both organizations. I'm a member of MG&E and also a member of the Rhode Island Watercolor Society, have been for over 20 years. I am now co-president of this organization. The Rhode Island Watercolor, I want to say something before I get into the Watercolor Society in the building. This is the second time that the Rhode Island Watercolor Society has hosted, has been the host for the MG&A exhibits. And I want people to know that we invited MG&E to come back a second time because of the positive response that we had from both our members and the general public who visited our gallery. I think it was 2 years ago when the Monotype Guild had its first exhibition in our building. So we're very happy to host you once again. The Watercolor Society, the Rhode Island Watercolor Society, is one of the oldest watercolor organizations in America. It was established in 1896, and it's been in this building, this J.C. Potter Casino building, since 1986, 1987. In Slater Memorial Park. It is an absolutely gorgeous park. People come here to picnic. There's a carousel. They come to the Watercolor Society for exhibits, and it's a beautiful space inside and outside as well. We have the boathouse. This building was called the boat, has been commonly called the boathouse, and I guess that's what, from what I've read, it's what it was at its inception. And it used to be that because it's on a pond, it was used, the pond was used for canoeing, kayaking, and in the winter, ice skating. So it's a really lovely place. The Watercolor Society has been here, quite a long time. And during those years, we have updated floors. Classroom space is brand new as of 2 years ago. The building is used as a gallery. We have a beautiful library. People can take books out on all, not just watercolor, different types of art and painting. And we have this studio space where we have teachers come in and teach also a variety of media. This is a place where we give people an opportunity to view, purchase, and exhibit, as well as learn about water media especially. And I'm very happy to be a part of this organization. And we're happy to host all of you. And that is it.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary. It's good to kind of get an overview of where we're able to exhibit. Great. So I'd like to introduce our juror who generously helped us juror this exhibition. Adrian Tió received his fine arts training from Temple University, the University of Cincinnati, and studied at the Tyler School of Art in Rome, Italy. He's a professor of fine arts in the College of Visual and Performing Arts at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, and has exhibited nationally as well as regionally in drawing, painting, and printmaking for over 40 years. So, Adrian, have you?
Aboard.
Great.
Thanks, Beck. I appreciate the introduction. And Mary, thank you again for serving as the host for the exhibition. My role in this venue was to have an opportunity to go through a lot of entries. For those of you that don't know about these exhibitions, there are over 270 entries. And my handler, Becca, told me that I could only accept 75. So you can imagine the editing that has to go through the process to get down to 75. But I did get to what I felt were the best 75, although I could have made it 84, but I settled on 75. I had to behave. And I think it's a very good show. It's a good show that shows a lot about the wide variety of how people interpret monoprint and monotype. I don't think it means exactly the same thing to everybody exactly, but it's all about variety. And I think that's the uniqueness about printmaking today, is that printmakers as a community look for new opportunities, new explorations. And unlike printmakers of old, we actually mix and match and don't do additions. We actually look forward to doing one of a kind when the opportunity works for us. And that's where you end up with monotypes and monoprints. The award winners were 3 outstanding works, and there are a lot in this show that I thought really talked about the pinnacle of what they're doing by their process and by their content, because I was looking for content as often as much as I was looking for the process. And they're really notable works, but there were a lot of other works that I really found interesting as well. And that's why there are so many honorable mentions. And, if my taskmaster would have let me, I think I would have given everybody an honorable mention because actually the award that you all have is that you were accepted in the exhibition. And for that, I compliment you all for doing such a great job. So again, welcome to the exhibition if you're seeing it for the first time. And if you were at the opening we had a couple of weeks ago, welcome back. Back to you, Becca.
Great, thanks. Just wanted to, Adrian, if you want to talk a little bit about your own work.
Yeah, so I am a printmaker. I've kind of fallen into being a printmaker. I trained as a painter and I've been an arts administrator for years, but printmaking gives me a chance to really work with a graphic image, but a very physical process. And in the image that I think is on the screen now, that's Lyle Castigway, who many of you already know about from Big Ink. And I've kind of been fascinated by being forced to work larger. I usually work with a letterpress. So my format tends to be up to maybe 12 by 16. And Lyle doesn't print anything smaller than 3 by 4 feet, basically. So that's what I'm working on here with him. It's a panel with a birch surface. It's carved. He's using a real loose ink, and we're printing on masa paper. And what I'm doing up there is I'm adding the 4 small panels. It ended up being a 5-panel print that we pushed together, and which you'll see me standing next to in the next slide for this process. And this is the medium size. I also have done this print just as a 2 by 4 foot. And I've also done 3 others, and those are all together as a 7 by 3 foot print. I encourage you all to take a crack at doing this. This is a blast to do. And he does do these exhibition kind of workshops throughout New England. So hopefully you get a chance to do it. This is me next to my print named after my mother. It's Mama Ida's Isla Verde. And it's kind of my riff on my family's background from Puerto Rico and different kinds of icons and images that we hold dear, that are part of what we like to say, La Mancha de Plátano. It means that if you're Puerto Rican, doesn't matter where in the world you're from, you got the stain of the plantain is in your DNA. And that's me. I'm all stained. Thanks, Becca.
That's great. Thank you. I'm also Puerto Rican, so I totally appreciate it.
Hey, prima.
Great. So we, as Adrian mentioned, we had quite a few honorable mention and award winners. So we're excited to be able to have the 3 top award winners for second and third prize join us tonight. Before we do that, though, I was going to share with you all, just so you can get a quick snapshot of what the prints look like. Like Adrian said, everything this show is remarkable. So I'm sure he had a really hard time choosing. Okay, hold on, let me get the shared. So here you can see this is our first, second, and third prize winners. And we have Adele, Margot, and Paula going to join us tonight to talk a little bit more about their work and their process. However, we did have 10 honorable mentions as well in the exhibition. So just quickly going to do a shout out to the 10 honorable mentions. Karen Adrian with Residuals, Lisa Barthelson with her Art and Isolation print series, Jean Borofsky for Uptown, Kathy Crawford for Inception, Alice Nicholson Gaelic for Sea and Sediment number 3, Amy Horahan for Birches, Sasha Lucas for Yin Yang, Bob Maloney for Interstate Layers 1, Ellen Roberts for Respite, and Ida, I'm sorry if I mess up your name, but Ida Sugudad-Datir for Gray and Green Landscape. So you can see the variety of the works, and it was really exciting to be able to see that there's such a large difference in all the different styles and techniques being used. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Adele to talk about her work, artists, and critics. So Adele.
Okay, hello, everyone. I'd like to begin by thanking the Monotype Guild of New England and the Rhode Island Watercolor Society for hosting this really lovely exhibit. And I want to congratulate all of my fellow exhibitors and award winners. And to Adrian Tió, our juror, thank you for your generosity to all of us in the show and to me personally for this award. I'd like to begin by sharing some information about my background, and then I'm going to talk about my monoprint in this exhibit titled Artist and Critic. So my life has been spent largely in the arts in one form or another. I studied drawing, sculpture, painting, and printmaking in Connecticut and in Boston in the 1980s. And after graduating from Mass Art in 1988, I promptly took a job as an art director in Cambridge. And then I spent the next 20 years working largely as an art director. From 1990 to 2010, I ran my own design firm. And in 2010, I retired from the design world and returned to my first two loves, painting and printmaking. In 2015, I completed an MFA and I bought my first printing press, which was an 1860s era cast iron beauty, a George Howard direct drive press, which this past year I gifted to the Museum of Printmaking. And I replaced the Howard press with two modern presses, a Takash and a Charles Brand. And I'm, I guess, delighted and probably a little dismayed to admit that I now own 5 presses, including a Pogo letter press, a wonderful old cast iron book press, and a little tabletop press that was made for Stephen Alcorn, who's a terrific printmaker when he was a boy. In 2016, I began teaching college level drawing courses, and then I founded a small publishing company called Simeon Press. Simeon Press publishes books and broadsides for artists and writers, and we also publish Linea, which is a hand-bound journal of poetry, short fiction, and art. Because I come from a family of writers and storytellers, and because of my experience as a graphic designer and art director and my love of printmaking and books, publishing in Simeon Press feels like the natural outcome of my career in the arts. I have to admit, I'm always happiest when I'm making things. And this has always been true for me, whether it's drawings, prints, paintings, and now books. The place where I feel most at home is in the studio. I love words, and I'm an avid reader, but I confess I prefer images over words as a means of expression. My piece in this exhibit, Artist and Critic, which I don't see on the screen. I don't know if that's just me, Becca. I don't see that image. The piece Artist and Critic has both words and images since the title is incorporated into the image. And it occurred to me this morning as I was preparing my remarks for this evening that I may have missed the point of my own work. Let me explain that. Initially, when I created this print, I was thinking of the critic as an exterior voice, as something, a voice outside of myself. And the critic, or the chicken, represents the voice of gallery owners and curators and, sorry, Adrian, jurors who over the course of my long career had either rejected or in some cases accepted my work. I remember years ago hearing a gallery owner referring to her stable of artists the way someone might refer to a stable of horses. And while this remark was kind of irksome to me, it was also enlightening because it got me thinking about the ways in which artists are treated by the art world, sometimes at least, were treated as prized livestock. So that was the genesis, or the idea behind this print, the notion of the artist as a kind of a prize-winning cow, and the critic perhaps as a squawking chicken. But all in good fun, and really with no intent of malice. It was a somewhat lighthearted jab, I thought. And now I want to talk a little bit about how I created the print. I began initially by appropriating the work of another artist. So to create this print, I found this wonderful woodcut by an unknown 19th century artist. And I used that as the base drawing for the print. And then I added digitally the title into the print with typography, artist and critic. Then I output that image onto a polymer plate, and I printed a small edition of prints, maybe 5 or 6 pieces. And a few days later, I started to play with the prints using pan and tube watercolors and watercolor pencils and markers and graphite and gold and silver gel pens. And I think I even used some wax-based colored pencils in this piece. And for me, the real joy in art making has almost always come from the ability to play with materials, to have a table full of materials, or even just a simple piece of charcoal or a pencil, and see what those materials can do, and to play with the materials the way children play when they're making images. Children play usually without much critique. And this morning, as I was thinking about my print, I realized that the chicken was most likely the stand-in for my own inner critic and not some exterior voice. And this realization made me laugh out loud, because I was thinking that one of my primary jobs as an artist is to silence the inner critic. And sometimes, occasionally, I succeed. So thank you for listening. And I look forward to any questions at the close of all of our remarks. And now I'm going to turn it over to Margot.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I can see my name up there, but I can't see anything. It's there. Here we go. I'm pleased to be here and to be able to share some information with you at this great place. I brought my work over, and I was just astounded at the beauty of the building and the scenery. It's fantastic. I'm waiting for my images to come up.
Sorry, we had a bit of a glitch with my Zoom crashing. So Carol is just going to bring the presentation back up, but I appreciate you guys just working with it.
Shall I continue?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. I'll start by telling you a little bit about my background. And there we go. Thank you. I went to Carnegie, it was at the time Carnegie Institute of Technology. I'm dating myself, but I studied graphic design there, and I got a BFA in graphic design. And in my junior year, my roommate and I took a step that no one else was taking, and we took our junior year abroad at the Tyler School of Art in Rome, which sounds familiar. Because Adrian also went there. I'm not sure exactly when, but my roommate went over to painting. She started in graphic design, and then she spent her life printmaking and painting after that. But I wanted to stick with graphic design because it was pretty intense at Carnegie. I didn't want to get too far away from that. And the closest thing was printmaking. So So I like consistency in my life. And I took a lot of printmaking courses there, and I really fell in love with it. So that when I got back to Carnegie to finish up my senior year, I took a lot of printmaking courses, as well as typography and type design and graphic design, whatever else. And then when I finished with Carnegie, I became an illustrator and also worked at art studios in New Haven for about 5-6 years. And then I started teaching graphic design as well at the community college and Pear College of Art there, all in the New Haven area. And for my thesis at Southern Connecticut State College, I did a project on Monotype and its role in art history. And that was years ago. And I wrote to Richard Diebenkorn and Yvonne Jaquette, Michael Mazer, Harry Bertoya, Matt Phillips, Fritz Eichenberg, and they were all living at the time. And they sent me back these wonderful letters, which I have. And Harry Bertoya especially went to New York to see some of his prints. If you know him, you probably know him by his huge standing chime sculptures in front of large corporations, especially in the city, in New York City. But he did a series of wonderful monotypes, which look like standing sculptures. They sort of look like his chime sculptures. They also look like his large mushroom-shaped, huge, monstrous bronze sculptures. So I asked him in the letter, what is the relationship between your monotypes and your sculptures? It looks like the monotypes are studies for your sculptures. And he was absolutely astounded that I would say that. He said, never, never, never. I would never combine media that way, or I would never associate two media. They're both very different, and that's the way I want them to be. But in my mind, I still think that maybe subconsciously, those monotypes were precursors of the sculptures that he did. I have a Dickerson combination press at home, and I'm a member of the Printmakers Network of Southern New England, as well as MGNE and the Enamel Guilds. I also do enameling. I think we can switch now from this print, if that's okay. And because in the Printmakers Network, we do portfolios, case portfolios, and there are about 25 of us. So we each submit a print, and usually it's an addition of 25 to each of these portfolios. So I'm used to doing additions, and I like methodology. I like different methods. I like to work with my hands. I like the physical aspect of printmaking. And monotype, what I like is a spontaneity, and everything in my monotypes influences my addition pieces, which now for maybe 15 years have been Japanese style wood blocks. Started out being intaglio, which is working into metal and really working that metal. And then collograph, as well as the intaglio, and now mostly into Japanese woodblock and monotype. Always monotype along with the printmaking methods, because it frees me, and again, it rubs off on my printmaking in the additions. So what you can see here on the upper left-hand side, you see two circles, and those circles are the two plants that you actually see in the monotype. Can we switch to the first monotype for a second? The winner, that one. See, there are those two plants on either side, and they are part of a woodcut, a wood block. Thank you, that's fine. So I have been combining parts of my wood blocks just for consistency and continuity. I like a theme usually based on nature and humanity, either getting along really well or not so well. And in this case, it's continuity, because you see the seeds coming up from the middle plant, which you don't see in that. You only see the sides. It was really difficult to isolate those two areas of the wood block and to print them into my monotype, and then also do the monotype around them. As far as birds go and pigeons, I have something for birds. My mother was a sculptor. She had something for birds. There's something special about the bird form. and something wonderfully sleek and luminous about pigeons. And they make you feel at home when you're in any city because they're always there. And yes, they may be a little dirty sometimes, but I think they're intelligent and they are quite beautiful. We can switch back. Thank you. Thank you. So moving on, the print on the upper right is my Japanese woodblock. And that's what, there's three of them. This is called Nocturnal, I don't know, Nocturnal something or other, that the name of that particular print, but it is a woodblock. And there's probably about 3 to 4 woodblocks, both sides, that go into that. And on the bottom left, I took that part of the woodblock to make another of those of the grouping that you saw the second place print come from. So there's a grouping of about 4 prints, that one plus this one down on the lower right-hand side. Again, pigeons, but that seed pod, that great big seed pod, is now lying on its side facing left. And again, isolated from the original wood block, which is also on the bottom left, and using different parts of the block. I feel good that I can do that. And rather isolate them with masks than cut them apart, I think that's the best way to go. Okay, we can go to the next one. Here we go again with pigeons and birds. This time, this is quite a large monotype. I'd say it's around 30 by about 46, 48. The first one I did was in 2 parts. Then I did it again as a mono print in just one whole unit. The top of it, the buildings in the foreground, that is a government building in Pawtucket. Actually, a friend of mine lives in the one of the apartment buildings that was a warehouse. And I can see right across on the Blackstone River, that big building standing up there. And so I included it, plus other outbuildings there around it. And all those other buildings behind are imaginary. The one in the front is a colograph, and that's from another print. So not only can I use parts of my wood blocks, but I can also use parts of the colograph. And that I included. And the rest of the whole thing is monotype. It's additive and subtractive. And what's really neat is that you can get such nuances in tonality, as you see in the stone wall behind the birds and the trees. And on the bottom, when you get the reverse reflection, wonderful to be able to get those very subtle value differences, and also the speckling that comes sometimes when you roll and then you take a print of the roll. Okay, now we can go on. These are 3 limited edition woodblock print. These aren't woodblocks, these are colograph prints done for China. I was able to go and show my prints in China 3 years ago, right before COVID. And with 4 other printmakers, we exhibited work. And again, parts of these are also taken from some of the woodblocks and some of the collagraphs, as you can see. And each of those crows on the right-hand side is a separate piece that fits in this little groove right there, the larger birds, the larger crows. So again, we're carrying on. It's consistency, it's connections. Connections are important. And again, it's nature and humanity as well. And, you know, the standing wind turbines there, they're very silent in that middle print. But to the right-hand side, they're whirring, 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 and all this, and helping the seeds become dispersed so that all those crows can eat a seed. Thank you. One more. These are monotypes. Upper left with the blue and the fish. Those fish are photopolymer plates, and I drew some I think alewives. I'm not sure what they were, but I drew fish with pen and ink and scanned them into Photoshop, and then distorted them in many ways, and then turned them into photopolymer plates. So, and cut them with a jeweler's saw so that they could be placed anywhere. And here I printed some of them over a monotype, and that monotype has stencils all over so that you see shapes of diatoms and amoebas and whatever occurs in the water and then printed the fish over those, or sometimes printed them on a very thin tissue and collaged them onto that particular print. That is a healthy biome. The fish are all healthy and happy to be there. To the right, same thing, but these fish are on two different types of, I think it was Thai paper, two different colors, very close to each other. And then Monotype all over that with working over a plexi plate and sending that through my press to get some texture going on in the background. And then the fish over that and stencils with the silver and gold. Those are I don't think it was rolled. I think they were painted through stencils. And on the very bottom, again, more polymer plate fish that are just the skeletons, having been affected by the heavy metal from the Housatonic River in our area, because it was really in very bad shape up till now. Lower left-hand side, fish again in a healthy biome of all sorts of little sea creatures and microscopic things in the water. And this is using the viscosity technique. So the base is plexiglass, which I drilled into and distressed in many ways, and then glued bits of cardboard onto it in the shapes of those strange shrimp-like creatures, and used 3 different viscosities of ink. And that plate is really reproducible. I sort of reproduce that, but it's only a monotype, not only, but it is a monotype, only one of those. And then put the fish in. And so it becomes a series. And we can go ahead, one more. All right, these, on the other hand, are enamels. And I use vitreous powdered enamel. It relates, what I get, the result is very similar to that feeling of layer over layer in Monotype. If you work with transparencies and every layer makes a different color or somehow changes the color that you're working with. That's what happens with glass. You heat it up in a little kiln, which I have up in my studio. And each of these pieces are about 4 by 5 inches. And then together, the whole thing is whatever, 18, 20 inches by about 5. That's the upper left-hand one. Based on a very tiny gourd called a gourd is a hulu, really. It's a good luck gourd in China. And these are tiny. They're about 1.5 inches high. Perfect, absolutely perfect. And I really did see connections between the gourds and the shape of vases and pots. And that's what this is all about. When you look up cloisonne, this is a cloisonne method of enameling. And I don't do jewelry, basically. I just do either sculptures or composites like that, the puzzle pieces. Those are on silver and copper, fine silver and copper. And the wires that surround all the pieces are silver wire. And then these layers and layers of different colored powdered glass, which are melted together. Bottom one, again, is the same kind of thing, but it's on copper. Every piece is on copper. And layers and layers. The layering of the monotype certainly influences these enamels and also what I do with the Japanese wood block. So I will never give monotype up. I love it. And that's about it. I got to hand this over now. Who is the next person in line? Let's see. It was great to talk to you and to be able to share this with you, by the way. Paula, I want to hand this over to Paula, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Hello. Hi, I'm Paula D. Simone. I think you have to speak a little louder. Hi. Hello, I'd like to thank all of you tonight for participating in this forum. I'd like to thank the Monotype Guild of New England, as well as the Rhode Island Watercolor Society and Adrian for his participation in this event. I'd like to say that I am a graduate of Mass College of Art, and my career has spanned 40 years in teaching museum education, studio art classes at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, as well as Rhode Island School of Design Continuing Education, the De Cordova Museum, Fuller Craft Museum, Attleboro Arts Museum, And currently, I am teaching studio classes in printmaking, 2 levels of printmaking, as well as painting and drawing at the Danforth Art Museum at Framingham State University. So now I would like to talk a little bit about my artwork. I don't see myself on the screen, but I know you all can see the artwork. So hopefully that is coming across. Before I
Paula, we can see the artwork. So
okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Before I start to speak about my creative process, I have just a short statement here that gives some understanding of my concept, my subject matter. So I'm just going to do a quick reading. The name of this particular piece is Unscripted. And this is an abstraction which draws inspiration from text, graffiti, calligraphy as visual vocabulary. Street art influenced my vision and propelled me to explore a variety of mark-making techniques. This work was done through a multiple play process. I combined a variety of techniques, including reductive ink painting, painting directly on the plate, in block printing application. So looking at the piece right now, I'm trying to dissect it. And just to give a little bit of a better understanding of my process, as I think back, I initially created an overall composition in black and white, establishing the positive and negative spatial relationships in the dynamics of my composition. After securing that, I then factored in a layer of color. And I think initially I isolated that color into a red iron oxide. So that would have been my second plate. After that, I considered the introduction of the blue violets and cool blues. And so that was added in as a second or third plate, second color plate. This piece, I feel, was a challenge because I wanted to challenge myself to integrate a number of techniques and how I could do it successfully so that it all connected, made sense, and didn't fight each other. As you can see, if you looked at it closely and tried to break it down, there's calligraphic mark making, there's very squiggle-like linear elements. I use painting on my plate with my liner brush. I use cutout stencil shapes in calligraphic shape-like forms. I used a reductive technique where I came in and I just took away color, leaving behind an underlayer of color. And that underlayer of color resulted in more calligraphy. I also included some block printing techniques so that if you look closely, you're going to see some additional imagery in a subtle way, but nonetheless, it's integrated in through the transparent layers. It offers me the opportunity to showcase all of my effort in the layering process. So I think I've summed that one up, and I think I'm ready to move on to the next piece, Becca. Okay. This piece is called Cosmic Connection. It's a diptych. And so here I am showcasing completely my reductive process. So I have here a print that was done, 2 separate prints, the left and the right, that marry each other and work and sit well together side by side, but they are individual prints. The process was spontaneity in the moment, working with multiple colors on my plate, wet on wet on wet, and through gestural brush marks, linear motion with mark making tools, my fingernail, my palette knife, etc. I managed to create an element of energy and movement that I was striking to accomplish. So I kept my palette in a similar range from the blues to the earth tones to black. And I think that forms a partnership as well as the overall form and shape. So I think I'm ready to move on. This next piece, entitled Blue Moon, is a combination of several techniques and a layering process. So I'm trying to organize my thoughts into how many plates occurred in this process. There was a direct application of ink to my plate, getting a positive painting on my plate, which I then printed. I did an overlay of additional transparent color, and I did some reductive takeaway mark making. After that, I introduced another layer in the form of a trace monotype. So you can see some delicate lineal mark making that was done with the trace monotype step. After that, I decided that I wanted to add one more calligraphic mark on this piece. And on the left-hand side, you might see a very light blue, vertical, scripted-like calligraphy, abstractly done, that I did as a painting on a plate, which I just printed, isolated it to that particular band on the print. So here we can see probably 4 to 5 plates that was done in order to achieve this outcome. My focus is to explore color relationships, to somehow maintain the translucency and transparent characteristics of my colors. I like to use gold and open acrylics. I find that I have some sense of predictability when I work with them. I like the intense pigment that I can get if I choose to have that. I do have one last image that I'd like to share, and this is a figurative study. I am transitioning right now at this time into figurative printmaking. I'm exploring the human figure, right now specifically the female form. And I'm enjoying this process. Every day is a new experience. I feel enlightened. I feel energized. I'm trying to think of ways I can combine some of the techniques that I know so well, yet at the same time explore something new and different. This piece was done as a process, multiple plate process. I did an initial background painting abstractly, where there's reductive techniques, there's some mark making, just giving a sense of background, perhaps maybe even an abstract landscape. I was putting my figure in a setting because this figure was inspired from a garden sculpture. So what I did was I did a trace monotype. I created a drawing, which I then transposed to my print. And I did a linear freehand drawing on my reverse side of my print. After that, I decided I wanted to further define and develop it. So what I did was I masked my background. And after masking it, I developed what I thought would be interesting skin tones and shaded areas, gradations, line, suggestion of anatomical features. And I did that through transparent texturing, mark making, reduction. And that's how I achieved the actual flesh area of my figure. So I think that probably sums it up. And I think my presentation is complete. Thank you. In case people ask questions.
Great, thank you. I believe that Carol, we were going to show the honorable mentions. We'll have Carol jump in. While we're waiting for that to happen, if you guys can go ahead and drop your questions in the Q&A box, we will collect some of your questions and then we'll pull up some of the images of the honorable mentions. Carol, if you want to jump in, because I lost the screen, if you want to jump in and read them off when you're ready. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties tonight, so we appreciate your patience. So we're going to just quickly show the honorable mentions again, since you guys weren't able to see them before. Great. So as you mentioned, we had 10 honorable mentions. So we have Karen Adrian with Residuals, Lisa Barthelson with the Art and Isolation Family Degree Diptych, Jean Borofsky with Uptown, Kathy Crawford with Inception, Alice Nicholson Gaelic with Sea and Sediment #3, Amy Horahan with Birches, Sasha Lucas with Yin Yang, Robert Maloney with Interstate Layers 1, Ellen Roberts with Respite, and then finally Ida with Gray and Green Landscape. So that's just a little overview of the honorable mentions that were in the show. So hopefully, if you guys have any questions, I don't see any in the chat, but if you want to drop questions in the chat and Q&A, we do have a couple of minutes for questions. In the meantime, I just want to thank the panelists for joining us tonight. I think what was really interesting is to see the variety of techniques that are being used and layered on by each of you, and how you work in monotype, but you work in all sorts of other styles of printmaking as well. So it was really fascinating to hear you guys talk about all the different ways that you create your prints. I was wondering if any of you want to jump in. Like, I know that Margot talked a little bit about how the reason why she loves monotypes and monoprints is because of spontaneity. But Adele and Paula, if you want to talk a little bit as well as like why monoprints as a printmaker, like what attracts you to that medium?
I think, you know, what's especially attractive about monoprints for me, monoprints and monotypes is, again, it is absolutely the spontaneity. And I think the ability to use multiple materials and to not be married to one form. I mean, you know, I've done lots of etchings over the years and other types of printmaking, but the beauty of monoprint really is the experimental nature of it and the flexibility of the medium. And I think, you know, I touched on it briefly, the joy in just mark making, that I think as printmakers, we all share that love of drawing and of making marks. And there's just tremendous freedom in the medium.
Yeah.
Hi, just to add to that, I just wanted to say that I feel that painting and printmaking has caused a bridge for me and has allowed me to express spontaneity, but at the same time, a freeness that I didn't experience the same way in painting.
Margot, do you have anything you want to add to that? You're muted, Margot.
Yes, hi. No, I think, you know, I look at my own work and I say, yes, spontaneity. And I love the fact that it's brought then to all the other art forms that I work in. But I know that I can spend eons of time working on one monotype, and then it's not spontaneous. But what is spontaneous, as I think it was Adele first mentioned, is the fact that you can bring in, so many different mediums. You can work with photopolymer plates. You can do a pronto plate, put them all together, draw, use Caran d'Ache. And what other way of art can you do all that in, and then put it all together with a press or use hand pressure? And I like to use hand pressure because the difference in hand pressure, whether it's very light or heavier, makes a huge difference in what is on your print, what you show. It's all wonderful.
Yeah, I agree with all of you. We do have a couple of questions. So this is for Margot, but I think it really applies to all three of you. The question is, how has your work changed during isolation during COVID? Has it affected the way that you do your work or the subject of your work in any way?
Is that for me to answer?
Yeah, it was addressed to you, Margot, but
okay.
Adele and Paul, I could jump into.
I found I had a great excuse to work in my studio all the time. And I would take long walks with my dog and come back, work in my studio, make dinner, stay up. I very often spend an all-nighter, very often. And I did a lot of that, especially because I'm working on some editions and those take me a long time. So the Monotype was a good break between the editions. Yeah.
Great. What about Paula, Adele? Did the isolation and COVID affect your work in any way?
I think walks in the woods contributed to my subject matter over the course of the past year and a half, looking at nature's elements and debris on the ground from storms, and all of that influenced and inspired me. So that would be my answer.
I had it early on in COVID. I lost my sister to COVID, so it affected me profoundly in that I had a kind of a hiatus in my work for a certain number of months. And then I think, like for all artists, the return to the work and the return to the studio was and has been just enormously healing. So I would say, you know, the work, no matter what else is going on in life, for me, I always come back to the work and I always come back to the studio.
Thank you, Adele. I'm so sorry to hear about your sister.
Thank you.
We have one last technical question. It's for Paula. The question is, for trace monotypes, do you use a thin paper for your prints?
Good question. After experimentation, I really prefer rice paper, specifically mulberry paper. So that's my chosen material. I feel that I have an understanding of how much pressure I can use, how much my paper is able to endure. And there's a certain amount of predictability at this point with the amount of work that I've been doing, that I can continue to do it and be successful at it without losing all the preliminary steps that I did, you know, up to that point. So mulberry paper is my answer.
Great. Thank you so much.
Jeopardy.
Yeah.
What is
I know, I know we could talk about paper types all day long. In fact, I think that was one of our most popular virtual events, was the event on Eastern papers. Great. Well, I know it's over 7 o'clock. So just to let you know that this event has been recorded and will be available on our YouTube page. So if you guys want to hop over to the Monotype Guild New England YouTube page, we'll also put a link on the mgne.org website. Also, we have a virtual gallery related to this exhibition. So I put the link in the chat. If you click on that link, or I believe the link is also in the emails that went out about this opening, you can go and take a closer look at each of the 75 works that are showcased in this exhibition. And then we have a couple of virtual events coming up this winter. We have on November 11th at 6 o'clock, we have a open Zoom meeting, and it's an opportunity for us all to meet and just talk about our works. It's open to members, but any printmaker who wants to join. So if you're interested in registering, we will send out an email about it next week, and we'll also post the link to the mgne.org website, but we just want to give you a heads up. And then in December, on December 8th, I've been invited as a representative of the Monotype Guild of New England to be on an artist panel at the Harvard Art Museums to talk about states of play and the way that we do our work as monotype artists. And we're also joined by ImGenie member Susan Deniston and other printmakers from the Boston area. So if you go to the harvardartmuseums.org website, you can join us for that virtual event related to their exhibition States of Play as well. So with all that being said, I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I want to thank Adrian for all the work he did in pulling this exhibition and choosing the works in the exhibition. I want to thank Mary and the Rhode Island Watercolor Society for allowing us to come back. It's one of our venues and it's preferred venues, and it's just been a great opportunity to work with that group again. I want to thank our exhibitions committee, Andy and Kate, who are actually going to no longer be exhibitions chairs at the end of the year. So this is really their last exhibition before they hand it over to Sally Dion, who will be our new exhibitions chair. So it's a swan song for them. And I just want to thank them for all of the hard work they put into MGNE exhibitions for the last 4+ years, particularly even dealing with COVID and how to deal with transitionary exhibitions. So thank you to them and the new exhibitions committee for all of their work. And then obviously I want to thank you for all the participants who are in the show, everyone who applied, and then Adele, Margot, and Paula. Thank you so much for allowing us to hear more about the fabulous and really inspiring work that all three of you do. So on that, I just want to wish you all a good night, and hopefully we'll see you guys soon, whether in person or virtually.
Thanks, Becca.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good
Thank you
night.
very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.